this is on improv today, and I had a couple disclaimers I wanted to start with. The first one is anything can be improv. Improv can be anything. It can be this water bottle. I can respond and react to this water bottle with a sentence or a sound. It can be a conversation. How many answers are there to the question, how are you? Do you always say fine? Probably. It's like kind of built in, right? But if we were to answer that truthfully in every minute of the day or every hour or every day, right? Depending on how comfortable you are with someone, the conversation can blow up, right? It can go any topic, deep, light, surface, laughter, serious, tears, right? It runs the gamut of emotion. And we don't think first. We don't always check ourselves first in conversation with someone we know. We don't think about our response. We generally just jump into that. We have the words that we grew up learning. We don't think about when we're going to take a breath in conversation unless we've been talking so much and we have to, right? It's very natural to speak and have conversation. And I think of music like that. And so today, I am going to talk about jazz improvisation, but I wanted to just kind of introduce this little blanket here, improv as a blanket. And in our mind, maybe we have a conceptual way that we approach that and maybe a concrete way that we approach that. And so I just wanted to offer today a few concrete ideas that are pretty theory-based and pretty specific, but I'm making some assumptions. So my assumption is that you will always bring your own creativity and conceptual, natural responses. So I'm not going to try to teach you how to do that. You are you, I am me. It's different every time. Mm-hmm. But I am assuming a few things that everyone who's here has a natural curiosity, wants to grow and wants to learn. I'm assuming that we all know practice makes permanent. And in order to have access to our full palette in improvisation, we want to be up to snuff on our scales, arpeggios, intervals. We want access, right? So it is worth it to practice your instrument, even if it feels like it's basics or it's classical or, oh, how's this going to help my playing on tunes? It will. We want to practice for facility. So that's one assumption I'm making. And the other assumption I'm making is that when you learn a tune, that isn't the end of it. You're exploring the song as if you are saying, I do to someone, I do. And your relationship begins for the rest of your life. You know that song. And that song has different sides, different moods, different tempos, but you know it. And your goal is to know that melody inside and out, internalize it. So those are the assumptions I'm making about everyone today, that you practice and that you care about learning the melody. And I'm also assuming that you don't have a ton of vocabulary, and I love that. And that's not a diss, because I don't really consider myself as someone who has a ton of vocabulary. And by that, I mean lick after lick that you can play over certain patterns and maybe 12 different rhythm changes heads that you can play on rhythm changes. And yes, I love that kind of playing. I love those brilliant musicians who have vocabulary up the yin yang. But I'm assuming we're coming to this just as a fresh, clean plate, and we can get started. So improv can be anything. If we had more than one person, I was gonna hold this up here. Can you guys kind of see what this is? It's 3 circles with random notes, all in treble clef. I had never played this piece until Friday, and I recorded it on Zoom with Jane Ira Bloom. We did 3 different versions, and it was so special and fun. And I hadn't played landscape piece like that in a long time. I would say graphic score, but it's not quite. So I just wanted to say improv can be anything. So let's start. We're gonna jump in here. I'm gonna share my screen and invite you to participate in my little PowerPoint. So the other thing I wanted to say about this too is, you know, as a learner and a teacher, to me, those things go hand in hand. And I would take a lesson every week if I could. There's still plenty of players and musicians out there that I just love and would love to learn from. And everybody has a different way of putting things, you know, and sometimes I feel like that's a hard thing to wade through and decipher and make your own. So just try it on today. Try it on how I'm putting it here today. And what would be really cool is for you to have your own pedagogical way of maybe regurgitating this to somebody. Like maybe you have your own way, and that's all awesome. And these are just thoughts for today. So the first thing, of course, and Paulo and I were just talking about this, is using the melody. And there's just 4 of us, so maybe everyone can take 2 seconds to answer what they think that means. What do you think, Paulo?
Just using the melody and changing, I guess, like I said, it's probably self-explanatory, the sentence, but, you know, you can go through the head, and when you start improvising, just use the same melody notes, either extend it a few bars or decrease in a few bars what the melody is, by changing the rhythm and figuring out how to make sure that those notes fits not only the chords, but fits the song.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I love playing with people who are like-minded in that, where we're all in it to play the song. Right? And it's like, oh, in jazz, okay, we play the head, then everybody solos, and then we play the head again. But like, oh, it's so beautiful when we're all playing the song. And even though we're cycling it over and over, that is so special. So these first 2 obvious ones we can skip, right? Paulo just said you could take the notes of the melody, change the rhythm, use the rhythm, change the notes, right? And you could do that in really short pieces. You could do that in 2-bar phrases, 4-bar phrases, or you could kind of do that creatively. Like you could do it at the phrase of the bridge, right? And then go into some other mode, right? But it's always there, and it should always be there as you're playing the song. So you can dip in and access. Complete sentences, part and parcel. Cool. If we get a little deeper, taking the entire phrase, so oftentimes we find these melodies of these show tunes and Great American Songbook tunes that run the gamut of category, right? They're so diatonic. So I liked what you said, Paulo. You're trying to make sure your notes fit in with the harmony. What if you didn't have the harmony? What if the harmony was not even a thing and you just had that melody? Oftentimes the melody isn't all that exciting, right? It's very diatonic. It's in the key. Not every tune, but these 2 examples, definitely, right? That's the first note, not in the key. Everything else, E flat, right? September in the Rain. All E flat, everything E flat. So we get a little bit maybe limited by that, but if it's all we had, we could really play with that. So, whoops, I should go back to this for a minute. So one more thing I might just add to this, it's not in my slide, but if we take the melody and the form, which is like what rules our learning in jazz, it's really fun to try to take an AABA solo or an ABAC solo, or to take those little part and parcel phrases and wiggle them up a half step, down a half step. Let one of those phrases become your motif that you develop, right? Let the melody be your guide. It doesn't have to be as blatant as use the notes, change the rhythm. It can guide you into some other exploration. So what form is There Will Never Be Another You? It's an A, B, A, C tune kind of, but it's really like an A, B. So it's got a long 16 A and a long 16 B. So I could take a solo, right? Basing my improv on the form of the melody. So that could be less about notes and more about structure, right? Just open it up. What's a tune you love playing that you could call right now?
Autumn Leaves.
Autumn Leaves, what form is that?
A, let me see, A, B, A, C.
A, B, A, C, yeah. There's kind of two A's right off the bat, right? That's one A, and then it does that again, right? And then the bridge. Yeah, bridge, C, B, C, A, B, C, maybe.
Okay.
So if you were to take an A, B, C solo, coming up with your own theme. I might want to remember what I did. That's my A, right? So I created a theme borrowing from the form and the structure, right? If I took the notes of the melody, and let's say just that right there, I'm just using that maybe as a new motif, right? So the melody can dip you in, it can send you off, it can be a huge dive you've been practicing for years, or it can just be the short dive and you just did. And I feel like knowing it and having a relationship with it, even if you don't play the tune for 20 years, come back and play it. It's there for you. The melody's there for you. It's all you need. And you can dip in and make so much music out of that. Last week, I played the first Paul Motion night with Drew at Nocturne. And I'm embarrassed to say this in front of Annie. He called two tunes that I had never played the head to. And he's like, how about, I had played them, but I think it's been 15 years, but I hadn't played the head. One of them was Periscope.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I know that, like I could sing it. I sang the whole thing to myself on the break. I was like, da, 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 da. And I was, I was like, I reeled like, okay, yeah. And we did it. And it was so fun. And the other one was Song Is You. I just never do that song. It's got that weird bridge, our intervals. We made it. And it was almost like the tunes were like, we've met before, and playing it with singers. I had a sense of it in my head, how the melody went. There's not a lick, not a chance in hell could I have played those songs had I not known the melodies. No way, Second time I was getting more of the chords down. Third time, it's everything that you need. So moving on. Any thoughts on that?
Man, if I didn't have like a lead sheet, I would struggle.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have like performances with Drew Heller, and Drew Heller is probably a fast drummer.
Yeah.
And every time that I had a chance to play with some really amazing performers, I get nervous. But playing a song without, I read music, but playing without reading and just knowing the melody, I think I would struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm not an ear player. I'm definitely love reading the music. That's the first thing I learned. I feel most comfortable with that. I feel like I can read it. Almost anything you put in front of me, great, right? So one thing I've been working on is to be more ear and not freak out, because I definitely go there. I just want to encourage you, use the music. Everybody does. I know people who are teaching concertos to their students, and they're allowing their students to use music. It's a different time for sure. And it doesn't mean this isn't happening. It doesn't mean you're not trusting it, because what's computing is the visual into what it sounds like. So don't beat yourself up about that. And as far as nerves go, I'm not trying to lecture. I still have nerves, but now it's like so great that I do. If I didn't, it would be like, oh, I don't feel anything for this gig. So the nerves are a thing. They're there. They can go right into the music, right into the notes you're doing. They don't have to take up any other external energy or space. And think about this. You only get to play that tune with those people that time for the first time. So it doesn't mean don't prepare, right? It doesn't mean don't shed. On a recording, it might mean we only rehearse that tune once so that we can still capture the experience of all of us discovering it. There's something special and improvisatory about that. But I think let yourself off the hook. It's going to happen like that one time, and you get to be a part of it and use your music and use your nerves as energy that goes into the music. Does that help, Jeesh?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you knew the melody, but you didn't know the song and the chords.
Yeah.
What did you do for? Were you a trio when you're playing the palm motion?
Yes, there was no horn.
So did you use like rhythm with? Did you use one of these basic options and created your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like I explored the melody, however many choruses I played before the bass player played it. And it was a little better each time. And that was my solo. And the palm motion music is also like that. It's free. There were charts for everything, but it was either a really purposeful, obvious departure from the song. I think we did that maybe once. Everything else was playing the song over and over. Out of time. Change is no time. I have a little section for that at the bottom. But these two tunes, were you asking me also what I did for the changes?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I listened to the bass player. I used my phone and I kind of knew them. I knew what key they were in. Song Is You, I couldn't remember the last 4 bars of the bridge, so I cheated. But I knew the melody, the intervals. I took a tiny second at the piano. I'm not as fast as I want to be with that. My goal is to if the bass player does something different, I want to be able to go with it, But I listened. I knew what the key was and I knew what the destinations were. That's a big one. As a pianist too, it's like if you can isolate, the A is in C, the bridge is in B, and then it goes to the relative minor, but it doesn't actually land there. It just goes into a 2-5 in that key. That helps me a lot thinking about destinations. Last A of that tune goes to 4, and then that's how it resolves back to 1. That's even if I don't get all the cyclical changes in there, at least I've got those destinations. And I was the only one copying for myself, so if I play the wrong change. Should we move on? Next concept. Okay, this next one is maybe it's for everyone. But I didn't know if there would be any high schoolers here, and sometimes a great way into improvising is the blues, because they know the form and they usually know this head, right? This melody is that minor pentatonic. It's not even a blues scale, right? It's just pentatonic. And now we start this little chapter on improvising with intervals. And as a pianist, I got to work with a teacher in Seattle when I was really young, just getting into jazz. I was in college, but I had only been playing jazz a few years, and he was really into the intervals on the instrument, piano specific. He talked to me about them as fractals, He has Parkinson's. He's in a home now, but he still sends me little sketches of things he's working on. His latest one is, that's the shape he sent. It's 2 major 7 augmented shapes, a minor third apart. And I know he wants what he wants me to do with it. I know he wants me to transpose that everywhere, but to check out where the white blacks look the same and where the black whites look the same. And so on the piano, we can get really sequence and pattern oriented because of the color of the keys, right? Oh yeah, just think about all the white, black minor thirds. There's 3 of them. We could use that on the blues, right? Just the minor thirds, and then there's 3 of the opposite. So this is a simple way to get into improvising on the blues. Camila, Annie, Paulo, if you guys have any high school students or junior high, sometimes it's really fun, especially like making sure initially they know their scale, right? You could start by having them trade with the bottom and the top of the scale. So like, you could talk about that minor pentatonic scale has got 2 minor thirds, 2 whole steps. And if we add a blues note in there, we get 2 half steps. So you could have students do a call and copy with themselves or with somebody else where they use just the minor thirds, or they use just the bottom 3 notes of the scale. Someone copies it, right? And then you say, okay, use the top 3 notes of the scale. Oh, they're the same, right? Same intervals. So you can bounce around in that way using just the seconds. You could move that around in fourths and fifths. Expand your range. You could do a high quote and copy it down low. This could be a saxophonist who's working on their range, and maybe you have them do that exact thing. A short 3-note idea from the pentatonic up high, and then repeat that 2 octaves lower, just to get around their instrument. Of course, in time, right? That makes it so legit and a little bit harder. So we don't really need that entire thing. I don't have this completely blown up, but I like comparing that blues to these other 2 blueses because they're all fairly different, right? That first blues, Sunny Moon, it's a minor pentatonic, and the blues changes are basically, I think the turnaround's 5-4-1 on that one, maybe, or it's whatever you want to do. It could be a simple turnaround for that tune. But Tenor Madness, this one, I have little examples of these. Tenor Madness has a bebop turnaround. It's got a 2-5 turnaround, and the vocabulary of the melody really implies the harmony, right? The D natural turns into D flat. We're not hearing any blues scale on this yet, right? We're hearing the changes. Back to H. And then a bebop lick for the turnaround, right? So my improvising on Tenor Madness would be different from how I would improvise on Sunny Moon, just because the melody's different and the melody implies something different. Does that make sense? Questions, thoughts on that?
My question, I'm still a little bit, say you're using like a C7 chord, and you said you're using 3 minor thirds, right?
C7 chord, yep. And I might think about C minor pentatonic. So I would use C to E flat and G to B flat. So
okay.
2 minor thirds. Yeah. And I might use E flat to F and B flat to C as my whole steps. What if you took 2 choruses of just whole steps, right? And if you stay on those 2, it's going to get enough of a good thing, right? Anything too many times. But then you can modulate it, right? You can take it up a half step, move it back down, take it up a fourth.
Here's another question. When you modulate, I've always wondered if the left hand chord should modulate too. When you modulate chromaticism, do you change the left hand?
I think it's if you're hearing it in your left hand, and if your left hand is a part of what your right hand is doing, which it should be, right? So I would say you could purposefully not and just check that out, right? That would be the equivalent of the bass player changing, but I don't change and it still goes. Or I throw the tritone sub in, but the bass doesn't, and it's fine, right? So you could purposefully hear it against that, right? Or you could purposefully make your left hand a part of that. I think it's all valid. And it's one thing I've been thinking about a lot is how much the left hand tends to choke off the right hand, right? And I am so guilty of this. I teach rootless to my students. I learned rootless. I'm using that as an example, but you know, we were taught the left hand is like marking the form, outlining it's our punctuation and it's generic voicing, so we can build in the rootless and have it dialed in, and we want it automatic. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't stop there. That's one way to play the piano. That's one way to play on a tune. We have access to the orchestra, like all the notes. And the left hand, it kind of gets the short end of the stick because we don't make it learn the melodies, and we don't always think the same with our left hand. We don't always put our same creative brain into that hand. So this wasn't part of my presentation today, but one thing I love doing, Paulo, is this little marionette hands thing. Come on, open up. Okay, so you can ignore the top one is like more for hands separate, but what if you did all of these things on a tune you're working on unison in time, and you worked on letting your left hand lead? So melody, left hand brings out that melody. And like multiple choruses, so that this is like the actual shed. This isn't how you're going to perform the song, but this is 20, 30 minutes of really shedding the song. And then you trade. You trade 16s, 8s, 4s, 2s with these things. So if I was going to do this tune, and let's say I'm going to trade 8s, melody and bass line. Same embellishment, right? Oh, I did a weird trade. But just getting your creative brain and your like scale brain to get the left hand to do the same thing. So both hands are responsible for all the parts, and we're dipping into the orchestra. We're breaking it up in different ways. There's this really beautiful recording of Jessica Williams playing Ghost of a Chance, and she plays the melody in all the extremes. She plays it with her left hand, and she comps up here, and then she moves it. And it's like such a beautiful example of playing the orchestra on a tune. So if your left hand is always comping and you kind of get in a thing where if you're not comping, you don't know where you are in the song, I might suggest practicing this. And I might suggest taking a comping solo. So that's both hands, maybe 3, 7, 1, 5, 1. So you have an octave container on top, or 5, 1, 5. Just go through the tune and then very slowly start making a little melody on the top of your comping, but have your hands work together and trade between. And I do this when I'm learning a song. I do little versions of this. I notice that my left hand, if I get in that mode where I'm like, yeah, my left hand chokes off my right hand unless I make it a part of my right hand. So it can finish a sentence. It can really be purposeful. Sorry for talking so much about that, but yeah. Blues 7, other blues on here. These are all Sonny Rollins blues. I think my 2 favorite improvisers in jazz, 3 favorite improvisers in jazz, Sonny Rollins, Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis. But Sonny Rollins, it's like he's the king of all these things. You know, if you listen to enough Sonny, it's like, whoa, what? And not so much that extension of the melody. He does that too. Not in the same way that Monk does it, but he weaves and he continuously plays the song. And this last one, Blues 7, if you've listened to that record, the way his first 4 choruses, he's playing around with that melody, and it starts with a tritone, right? That's that one. So it has this big emphasis on the sharp 11, and it's different from those other 2 things. Yeah, and the improvisation is different because the melody is different. It really sets you off into its own specific adventure based on the melody. And they're all 12-bar blues in B flat, but I wouldn't play the same on those 3 tunes. Does that kind of make sense? I'm gonna skip. Oh no, we got to listen to this. Okay. Yes. Check this out. So we're gonna listen to this through the head and then into the first 2 choruses of the tenor solo. Finally changes to something else, but what's he doing there?
He kept the rhythm but changed the melody?
Yeah, in his comping, he's using the last bar of the melody. The 2 choruses of comp. That's the last bar of the melody. Or last 2 bars. It's pretty, I mean, it's pretty blatant. I think the thing that I love about it is he's not shy. Super confident. And it's very similar to what he would play on his solo. And yeah, Charlie is soloing. And yeah, it is competing with that sonically, but I think it's also driving it, and it's also pulling from where they came from and sending them where they're going. That's a cool example of maybe how the comping and the improv go hand in hand. Let's see. Oh, cool. So we could use intervals in another way. There's this tune. What is this thing called? Love. And Paulo, if we look at that first 4 bars, what interval do we see there in the melody?
Minor third.
Minor third, yeah. How about this second system?
Chromatic and
half step. And then how about this D sharp to E?
Same.
So you could use the melody. I'm sorry, you could use the intervals in the melody to improvise just those intervals. So if you took a chorus of only using minor thirds, or a chorus using only half steps, those are some ideas too. I just don't mean to go on too many tangents. I think I can skip some of this stuff. This is definitely theory oriented, and I'll send all this stuff to Camila so she has it. My handout shows the changes of blue and green with the most consonant scales. And like I said at the beginning today, I was going into this assuming that we all have a curiosity to learn. We all practice, so we have facility, and we aren't relying on a bunch of vocabulary. So this is not my conceptual creative brain. This is my theory brain. But instead of the pressure of having to know the name of every mode and every scale and everything that might work, there's this thing called most consonant scale. And you can not know what the name of it is, but you could still figure out the scale. And the pattern is chord tone, whole step, chord tone, whole step. So you would do that on the chord in root position. So that's most consonant. And I think it's an easy way to start compiling group of notes that work over that chord without having to know every nitty-gritty theory name, right?
So when you improvise, it's okay to have going back to that, what is that thing called love, when you had the minor thirds?
Yeah.
Have a chord tone and non-chord tone, but still not within like an accepted alteration?
Or not. Or not. Or stay there. Stay up a half step from your sus chord and stay there and be strong, you know? And musically, resolve it when you want to. So if I'm using half steps on what is this thing called love, that's not in the chord. Maybe I resolve it. I say go for it, because those exciting moments that sound like mistakes, that is energy, you know. Your ear will know, ooh, but did you mean to? Ooh, you know. Then what are the ways that you can get out of it then? Or what are the ways that you can resolve it? This may be a fault of mine, because I really like doing this. I like playing something that's not going to work, to see how either collectively or personally it can resolve, because that to me is what forces the music to be different each time. So if we go back to the very first thing we said at the beginning, that you care about learning the melody, you could play wrong for two choruses, but having that melody ingrained, it's part of the thread of your personal relationship with the song, you'll get out of it and it'll resolve and it'll be exciting. And someone may call you on that. What are you doing? That's a G half diminished. And you can be like, I know. You know, you can choose. And it's kind of fun to trade, like trade an out thing where you're purposely pushing maybe chromatically like that, and trade with something really tonal. You know, trade with yourself so you can dip in and do all those things. Scales, arpeggios. This could take another 4 hours, but these are some other ideas. We did talk about key center. I like simplifying. A good example is a tune that's written over what is this thing called love. It's called Subconsciously. And it actually has examples of most consonant scales. So this first example, it's the C7 with the sharp 4. And Lee Konitz got rid of all the 2 chords. So we just have 5, 1. And so the melody gets busier and crazier, but the harmony, the microscope on the harmony, our scope goes way back out. Now we just have more time to play on that harmony. So that's something cool to think about. I wanted to just finish with this. We said at the beginning that anything is improv. It really is. I used to have a teacher who would walk in the room. There were 7 of us, so we didn't all play jazz, and I was the jazz snob. And I at first hated that class, and then I think I learned the most from that class, because there was an oud player, this electric bass player, that our teacher would come in and he would say, Denny Goodhue, great tenor player, he used to play with Etta James. Anyway, he was like, he'd bring a plant from his house and he'd say, we're going to improvise this plant today. And I mean, what? We're like 17, 18. We're like, oh, Denny. But it forced us all to use all of our senses and as much facility as we all had, and to let go of any ego. There's no room for that in the music. Pointing at me, I was the one that was like, there's no changes, you know. This is a long time ago. Playing free is exhilarating and liberating. And if we commit to our practice and we commit to building our facility and knowing our instrument so that we have access, we have more opportunity and more confidence to bring to a situation where we might be able to play. And it's not just these three categories, but this is, or two categories, but this is how I like to think of it. Time, no changes. Changes, no time, or a combination of. So I have a bunch of examples, and we could maybe end by listening to a couple songs if we want. But one really fun way to practice this is to take just the melody of a song and play it out of time and continue to improvise out of time over just that melody, no chords, and to think like a horn player and to really try to be linear. Let your blowing be an extension of the melody, but you're not restricted or committed to time. And it doesn't mean it's just slow. It doesn't mean it's just play a ballad vibrato and just keep playing it. It really, I think, means that accordion effect of pushing and pulling. And I count my blessings every day to have had two band leaders who I've been able to do this with for 20 years. Jane Ira Bloom and Julian Priester and Jay Clayton, actually. It's really a cool thing. You could write something, you could compose something to do. The Paul Motion stuff was all free last week, and I didn't know his music well enough. I made myself a playlist, but I was like, oh, it was so fun. It was like discovering, it was that feeling of discovering together as a trio. But it was also so beautiful to hear a drummer's compositions like that, like his melodies, and to see, wow, what a full package, like well-rounded musician. Like he played the drums, but he wrote these pieces. And I think I never once ever thought about the harmony as we were playing. I played what was written and I threw in my own, but it was very linear. So when you're playing free, or if you're asked to play free, or if it's new to you and you're in a group and there's a free tune, here are some things I think that help. Come up with your part. You can treat it like pop music. Come up with your part and play your part. Your part could be highlighting the scene. Like maybe you take a minute to, what does it need? What does it need from me? Ah, it needs me right here. Boom. Maybe you only play on one every 7 measures, and that's your part. But you can explore that hopefully together with the band and see what's needed. Be flexible. Be flexible. Don't be literal. Don't be literal. Be open. Use repetition. Use repetition. Play strong. Play strong only if you need to play. Tap into other elements besides notes and volume and articulation. Tap into texture. Tap into color, mood, other adjectives. Think like an orchestra and be conversational. Be conversational. So I don't know about you guys. I sometimes waffle between extroverted and introverted. This past season has been so strange. Sometimes I feel really antisocial, and sometimes I crave and miss conversation so much. So, you know, what are you, if you're at your job and someone is talking to you, you don't really have the option to bail on that person. You've got to still enter into conversation. So I think that's what it is. Be willing to be conversational, even if you're not feeling it, because something's going to happen. And then as Matt Wilson puts it, it's offering and receiving. And it's a gift to who you're playing with. It's a gift to you. It's a gift to who's listening. So there's that. Can we listen to like 2 examples? Time, no changes. You guys know this little melody? So that's a time, no changes example. Maybe in my early days of playing jazz, I would have had a stomach ache if somebody gave me that chart. I would be like, oh, what am I supposed to do on this, right? But it gives you everything you need for comping. If this had been a masterclass on comping, oh my gosh, comp clusters. You can comp those intervals we talked about. There's a great Chick Corea book out there. Chapter 3 is on comping. Check it out. It's fabulous. So that's